You know what you get, Paul, when you tell people they're not under the law, they're dead to the law, and they're released from the law? You get Romans 7. That's what you get. You get people who are wanting to do what they can't do and not able to do what they ought to do, and who see themselves as wretched people. That's what you get. You have made the law into disease and death. And what you get is half-baked, carnal, worldly Christians at best. You think the key to a life of changed love and godliness is to die to the law. I think you're dead wrong, Paul. I think you better call people to come alive to the law, submit themselves to the law, get under the law. And then, Paul, you know why I think that? Because all you get is verse 19. What I want to do, I don't do. And what I don't want to do, I do. That's what you get. That's what you get. That's where your doctrine leads. I've been watching the church at Corinth, Paul. I've been watching the church at Laodicea. You know what they say about the church of Laodicea in Revelation 3:17? Poor, blind, wretched, lame. That's the description of the church at Laodicea. I'm watching those, Paul. And you know what? That's what your doctrine produces. I think that's what he's got to deal with. He's got to deal with that. I'm watching Bethlehem. In fact, I'm watching those guys and their internet. I'm watching what those women eat on the sly. I'm watching these things. That's what you get, Piper, when you preach justification by faith alone, apart from works of the law. I tell you how to fix that. Get them under the law. Get them under the law. Then you'll have some real victory in this church. I think that's what he's got to deal with. You might say, aren't you concerned about producing a church full of wretched people? Wretched man that I am. Everybody feels wretched on Sunday morning. Everybody feels wretched on Monday morning. Wretched, wretched, wretched. All you ever produce here is wretchedness. I said, I'm a little bit concerned about that. Not much. I'm way more concerned about producing a church full of pasted smiles and hypocrites and lies. That's what I'm concerned about. People who in their small groups look like they don't have any problems. I never see anything nasty. I never have any lustful thoughts. I'm never tempted to steal. I don't ever lie on my tax report. I'm Christian. Romans 7 is about pre-Christian. I'm very concerned about that kind of church because I don't want to be in one. And I don't want to be the pastor of pasted smiles, chipper superficiality, blindness to our own failures. You know what that produces? Hypercriticism, judgmentalism. If you don't feel wretched often enough with a spiritual, godly, spirit-wrought wretchedness that moves quickly out into the embrace of justification by faith and comfort in an alien righteousness, if you don't move through that rhythm of gospel brokenness in life often enough, you know what happens? You pick on everybody. Look how she dresses, and look how he fixes his hair, and look at that stuff they do with their kids, and look at. And I want to say, would you stop that? I mean, Paul wrote the whole second chapter for people like that. I don't want that to be, I don't want to be like that. I'm prone to be like that. That's where I say, wretched Piper. As I've watched why people don't come to Christ for their eternal joy and rather choose everlasting destruction and misery, there are several kinds of reasons. The one that I have in mind here is a hopelessness that settles in on the soul that doesn't say the gospel is false. It just says there's no hope for me. That's all. One of the sources, not the only one, of this hopelessness is an unbiblical perfectionism that does not provide people with categories to understand their own failure as a Christian. And therefore, when they stumble and fall into a sin or some repeated sinning, they don't have any way to explain what's going on in their lives, and they despair that they aren't a Christian. So, here's what I'm not saying. I'm still clarifying now. I'm still on clarification. I am not saying that Christians live in continual defeat, nor do I think these verses teach that. I don't think Christians live in continual defeat. But no Christian lives in continual victory, nor ever will, till Jesus comes or you die. That's my firm conviction. And I think the opposite leads to great distress and suicidal thoughts and much discouragement, and probably more bad works than good works. Now here's the closing illustration. In 1944, J.I. Packer, he was not a believer. He had promised somebody who witnessed to him that he would go to the Oxford Christian Union. And there a no-name man, Earl Langston, preached a sermon. And Packer says, "The scales fell from my eyes and I saw the way in." Then the battle started. Because surrounding him in those days were a lot of perfectionist teachers. And they were saying to him, you can have an experience called sanctification by faith. Now I tremble because I use that phrase and I do not mean this by it. I love that phrase, sanctification by faith. But what was meant by it 40 years ago at Oxford was a second crisis experience. And once you've had it, kind of a bump up to a new level, no more struggle in the Christian life. That was the teaching. No more struggle after you get sanctified by faith. You rise to a new victorious level of living. The Holy Spirit fills you and you are above the battle. Let go and let God. And he almost committed suicide. He said, I almost committed suicide because, number one, I had a very sensitive conscience. And number two, I know I will never be perfect. I just won't. So I'm going to blow my brains out. And you know what saved him? Romans 7 saved him. But it was through the book on indwelling sin by John Owen, written 350 years ago. And he said, they rescued me from the overheated holiness teachings that I was about to be killed by. And I just want to close here by saying, I hope you get hope from this. Because I want you to find your way between two extremes. One extreme is the hopelessness of perfectionism. We lift the level of demand in the Christian life so high that you know in reality you have never, do not now, nor ever will in this life attain perfect motivation for every perfect deed, and therefore you want to blow your brains out because there's just no hope of living the Christian life. And I want to protect you from the other kind of hopelessness which says all there is defeat, 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 defeat. There is no progress, there's no victory, there is no hope for any change in your life. And you say, well, if that's true, I may as well blow my brains out too. And I want to say the Christian life is a life of massive hope. And the hope is grounded in two things. One, it's a hope that we are justified by virtue of Christ's righteousness, not our own, and His is perfect. And by faith we cleave to Him, and in Him we become the righteousness of God. And secondly, little by little, by the power of the Holy Spirit, we do begin to change. And there are enough echoes of love in our lives that I don't know how far you can go. I just know it's farther than you think you can go. And therefore never make peace with sin. Ever, ever, ever. So, I feel strongly about the way this describes Christian experience.